continue to be a voice for the voiceless, the Coptic Christians of Egypt. I remember some years ago when young people in China desired change in their country and began to protest in Tiananmen Square. All of us remember that lone protester walking in front of the army tank, and yet the tank moved with him and did not do him any harm. The whole world was outraged and spoke out against this behavior by the Chinese authorities. Yet now, today, we have a far worse situation happening in Egypt, where military tanks are moving at full speed and flattening peaceful protesters and shooting them with live ammunition. The state-sponsored media announces moments after that the Copts are attacking the military. What nonsense! The mind boggles to comprehend such a situation, and why is the international community taking little action to condemn this atrocity in the strongest of terms? I also have a question to my Muslim brothers and sisters. Why is it that a Coptic dome representing heaven or a cross that is a symbol of patient endurance and forgiveness enrages you so much that you decide to attack this church in Aswan and others and burn it to the ground and attack Christian homes and businesses? Why is it that Muslims turn to physical violence when they do not approve of any issue or if they feel some injustice towards them? Whereas Copts have turned to fasting and prayer for 3 days to ask for God's intervention and protection to the crimes against them. I will never forget the image on Australian television of a young Muslim boy wearing a t-shirt upon which was written in red, saying, "Kill Solomon Rushdie." You didn't agree with Rushdie's book, but why is it that you teach your children to hate and kill? Surely there is a more human and civilized way to defend your beliefs and rights. In the civilized world, it is called dialogue. I want to also ask, why is all this persecution happening to the Copts? Father Mark Jury, an Anglican priest from Melbourne, answers this quite eloquently by saying, "Today, the root of massive human rights abuses being suffered by the Copts is entirely theological. Their difficulties are grounded in an Islamic vision for society which affords a clearly defined place for non-Muslims, and specifically including Christians. Not all Muslims are seeking to implement this vision, but many are, and there is no coherent alternative vision being offered to Muslims in Egypt today. The Islamic political vision, which is the root of the Copt sufferings, demands that non-Muslims accept a place defined for them by Sharia law. This is the status of the dhimmi, who is permitted to live in an Islamic state under terms of surrender as laid out in the Dhimma Pact. These terms are a well-established part of Islamic law and can be found laid out in countless legal textbooks. Father Mark continues to say, the pact of surrender of non-Muslims is understood in Islamic law to include a series of conditions which conquered Christians, such as the Copts, have endorsed. For example, the Pact of Omar, established after conquest with the Christians of Syria, said, "These are the conditions that we set against ourselves and followers of our religion in return for safety and protection. If we break any of these promises that we set for your benefit against ourselves, then our Dhimma, promise of protection, is broken, and you are allowed to do with us what you are allowed of people of defiance and rebellion. These conditions include We made a condition on ourselves that we will neither erect in our areas a monastery, church, or a sanctuary for a monk, nor restore any place of worship that needs restoration. The crime of the Copts in Aswan province was simply that they wished to repair their church. This is opposed by the theological logic of the Dhimma Pact, which states that non-Muslims are not allowed to repair places of worship, on pain of being treated as people of defiance and rebellion, from whom safety and protection has been withdrawn. In other words, such a person can be killed and their belongings plundered because they are entitled to no protection under Islamic law. For some pious Muslims in Egypt today, the act of repairing a church is a flagrant provocation, a breach of the peace, which amounts to a deliberate revocation of one's rights to exist in the land. This becomes a legitimate topic for sermons in the mosque, as the faithful are urged to use their hands to uphold the honor of Islam. It is seen as no injustice and even a duty to destroy the church and even the lives of Christians who have the temerity to repair their churches. Likewise, those who go to the streets to protest church destruction are also rebels who have fortified their rights to safety and protection. It is this theological worldview that Father Mark Jury says, which motivates both the church destruction and the killing of protesters by members of the military chanting Allahu Akbar, Allah is great. And also, this week, Mr. Muhammad Hilal of the Egyptian Islamic Society continues with this attitude of dhimma and says there is no discrimination or persecution of Christians in Egypt. And that I'm a hateful person and an extremist, and that I'm not supported by any Christians. I wish that he was here today to see the thousands of Copts here protesting the discrimination of Christians in Egypt. Dear brethren, in the first 5 months of 2011 alone, there have been over 20 separate incidents of violence and persecution against Copts. These include bomb explosions on churches, burning and destroying of churches, abduction of women and forced conversions, attacks on monks and monasteries, destruction of Christian homes and businesses, attacks on peaceful protesters, and the murder of dozens of Copts, just to name a few. Despite this bleak situation that we find ourselves in, St. Paul tells us some comforting words. He says, "We are hard-pressed on every side, yet not crushed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Struck down, but not destroyed. Always carrying about in the body the dying of the Lord Jesus, that the life of Jesus also may be manifested in our body. For we who live are always delivered to death for Jesus' sake, that the life of Jesus also may be manifested in our mortal flesh. Therefore, we do not lose heart. Even though our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man is being renewed day by day. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding an eternal weight of glory, while we do not look at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen.